Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back on stage the managing partner of Innovate, Mr. Scott Anthony.
That was sad. Nobody clapped for me a second time. Just a little bit. Everybody liked Karen's slides so much. Those were very pretty slides. I have serious slide envy. Before I begin, I just wanted to say on behalf of all the speakers today, the people behind the scenes who have organized things, the voices that have broken through and asked questions, the tireless work done by everyone, I think deserves a round of applause. This has been a great day. I also wanted to see if, oh man, it's not up on my screen anymore. I wanted to see if Pocholo Gonzalez is in the room. Someone picked up my Twitter handle here and tweeted that I am their idol. Sir, you are my idol too, wherever you are. That gets less claps than the background people, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to provide just a few more remarks about innovation. The first set of topics that I discussed was some thoughts about what might be trends that shape the future, what you would look for to see in businesses that would be tomorrow's disruptors. What I want to do now is to talk about how actually to innovate. I want to do this by giving you some best practices and telling you a case study or two of innovation in action. First, let me tell you that as good as the background support has been today, there was one small mistake if you listen to the introduction of me about an hour and a half ago. I was introduced as the co-founder of my company, Innovate. I am not the co-founder of my company. When I first learned about Innovate, I was a student at the Harvard Business School. I was sitting in 2000, October of 2000, in a classroom, being taught a class by Clayton Christensen, legendary business thinker who I mentioned before. This was the first and only time the case study pictured here was ever taught, Innovate Architects of Disruption. This described the company that Christensen co-founded with my still colleague Mark Johnson back in 2000. This described a company that bears no resemblance to the company that exists today. Today, Innovate is a global management consulting company. We've got about 100 people across the United States, Europe, and Singapore, where I have been based since 2010, with a venture capital arm in Singapore as well. This case study described a software company. This is the first website for Innovate pictured here. The idea here was Innovate was going to take Clayton Christensen's great big academic brain and put it in a box and turn it into a software program. I remember distinctly reading through this case study and having it taught to me and going home and saying to my then girlfriend, now wife, this is a pretty interesting guy, this is a pretty smart guy, but this is a really bad idea. And it turned out I was right, this was a bad idea, this failed. The second version of Innovate bore almost no resemblance to the Innovate that exists today. It was a conference business. The third version of Innovate bore almost no resemblance to the Innovate that existed today. It was a newsletter business. The fourth version of Innovate begins to look like the Innovate of today. Now, I've been in the field of innovation for about 15 years now. I've seen in that time hundreds, if not thousands, of ideas. I've seen ideas from great big companies. I've seen ideas from my employees. We've seen entrepreneurs pitch to our venture capital arm. All of these ideas are the same. Every idea to innovate is partially right and partially wrong. The fact that Innovate's first version was incorrect is no anomaly. This is the way the world works. What separates success from failure isn't how smart people are, it isn't how good their plan is, it's what they do when, not if, the first idea doesn't work. I've also learned over the last 15 years that this need not be magical, this need not be mysterious, this need not be a black art, this is a discipline. You can increase the odds of successfully innovating if you remember four faces. Here's the first one, Peter Drucker, one of the world's most famous and influential management gurus. Drucker reminds us of first principles. The purpose of a business, Drucker once wrote, is to create a customer. If you don't create a customer, if they don't transact with you, nothing else matters. How do you create a customer? Drucker also wrote, the customer rarely buys what the company thinks it is selling. You think you provide a product, you think you offer a service, but that's not what the customer perceives. They've got a problem and you've got an answer. Great innovators find problems worth solving. It might be an innovator's own problem. They might solve it for themselves. It might be that the innovator invests the time to deeply understand the target customer so they empathize with them and can anticipate what the customer can't actually articulate. Whatever it is, innovators invest the time to work on the right problems. Second phase, Pablo Picasso, the great Spanish artist, who once said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." One of the mistakes we make when we innovate is we think we have to do something that no one in the world has ever done before. This is not true. Steve Jobs once said, if you ask a creative person how they did it, they feel a little bit guilty, because creativity is nothing more than connecting things. He was a big fan of Picasso's. What great innovators do is put themselves in the place where innovation magic always happens, the intersections. They're brushing up against new people. They're colliding with new ideas. They're studying other industries so they can take an idea from one area and bring it to another. The truth is, someone in the world has probably stared down the problem you're facing. Maybe not in your company, maybe not in your country, maybe not in your category, but they're out there. Find that inspiration, borrow it brilliantly, and adapt it to your circumstance. Then you have to remember the third phase, who will guide us from how we go from the spark that starts the innovation process to actually innovating. How do we define innovation? Simple definition, 5 words. Something different that creates value. Something is intentionally vague. This isn't just technology. There are lots of ways to innovate. Different as opposed to better or a breakthrough, because sometimes the things that create value take complicated things and make them simple, take expensive things and make them affordable. The last 2 words, creation of value, are by far the most important because they separate innovation from its precursors, invention, creativity. You need those sparks, but until you translate them into revenues, profits, improved satisfaction, whatever, in our eyes, you have not innovated. If I asked you all to close your eyes and imagine a symbol that showcased innovation, I'm willing to bet you would all think of a light bulb. If I asked you who invented the light bulb, you would say this guy, Thomas Edison. He didn't really. Lots of people invented the underlying technology behind the light bulb. We don't actually remember Edison because he was a great inventor. He was more than 2,000 patents to his name. We remember him because he was a world-class innovator, obsessed with creating value. The world's first electrical generating facility was owned by the Edison Electric Company, operating in Lower Manhattan. He didn't invent the technology, he pioneered a way to provide people with electricity. Never forget his quote, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." You've got to go and make it happen. The final phase is, in my mind, the most important phase of the 4 that I'll show you. Remember, every idea is partially right and partially wrong. You cannot tell which part is which through analysis, because no matter what, you're going to be making assumptions that will prove to be wrong. If you try to do it only through analysis, through spreadsheets, through expert interviews, etc., you will learn a lesson taught by the great American philosopher, actor, and occasional boxer Mike Tyson, who once said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face." The punch you will receive is the plan that looks so good on paper, ended up resting on shaky assumptions. Remember how the Wright brothers solved the problem of allowing a human being to fly. Before they built an airplane, they flew a kite. If a kite crashes, nobody gets hurt. Before they built a kite, they built a wind tunnel, a cardboard box, bicycle spoke wire, and a fan that allowed them to dramatically simplify running experiments and learning. You need to do the same thing. Let's talk about innovation in action at a relatively small business. The picture here is from 1917. This is a class from an institution in Philadelphia in the United States called the Settlement Music School. Settlement was founded in 1908. In its history, it has educated tens of thousands of young students in classical and jazz music. Illustrious alums include Kevin Bacon and Albert Einstein. If you wondered how they connected, there you go, 6-degree connection right there. In 2010, the woman pictured in black, Helen Eden, became the 6th executive director of the Settlement Music School. At the time, the school had 6 branches like the one you see pictured on the left side of the screen here. A reasonably small business, about $7 million a year in fees from classes, about a $20 million endowment, a not-for-profit company. Eden gave her team a challenge. How do we take these physical facilities and transform them? Make them a third place, like a Starbucks or a house of worship, where not just children, but adults gather? How do we go and expand to target a new segment? We came in, my organization, and ran just a couple days of training for Eden and her team. They then went out and did all the things that great innovators do. They immersed themselves in the market. They talked to adults in the area. They kept hearing recurring themes. Adults were lonely. They found it hard to make friends, and they wanted new ways to meet people. Music was a connection to youth. As they studied other businesses like Picasso, they began putting pieces together. Like Edison, they started thinking not just about a class, but everything required to make it happen, how they would attract and market and do everything to deliver value. They came up with an idea, they then tested it. The idea ultimately became called Adult Rock Band. The idea here is you get a group of people together, each in an individual instrument, under the tutelage of an expert instructor. It's a way for people to meet new people. It's a way for them to jam and recapture a piece of their youth. This is done by a group of people that looks no different than the people in the room here. One of the great mistakes that we make sometimes in conferences like this is we think, I'm not Tony Fernandez. I'm not on the board of directors of Uber. I didn't run Obama's campaign. Therefore, none of this stuff matters to me. But anyone here can, and everyone here should, think about how they can do something different that creates value. The most important word in this definition, by far, is the first one. You can't do something different that creates value unless you go and do something. The best gift I ever received from a project team is this. This is a bobblehead doll affectionately known as Skoda. This is my head grafted onto the body of the Star Wars character Yoda. The team had told me they were going to try and do something. I said, no, this is not a try or try not. This is a do or do not. You need to do the same thing. By way of metaphor, a couple years ago, my now 10-year-old boy, Charlie, announced he wanted to learn to ride a bike. What did we do next? We did not watch any YouTube videos. No PowerPoint presentations were involved. We did not discuss the theory of bike riding. Charlie got on a bike and began to pedal and fell down. He got up. He began to pedal. He fell down again. He got up. Today, Charlie is a competent bike rider. He can get from point A to point B without too much difficulty. If he practices enough, he could be a proficient bike rider. Performance-enhancing drugs and Tour de France might be in his future. Don't do drugs. They're very bad. You need to do the same thing. Get on your innovation bikes. Within everyone is a world-class innovator. This is a discipline. This is a set of skills that any of you, with the right conscious practice, can master and can manage. This is my 64th trip to the Philippines since I moved to Singapore in 2010. I've worked with some of the great companies in this country. I've seen some of the startups in this country as well. I know the potential in this market is astonishingly high. I know you all are capable of doing so much. So please, go do something different that creates value. Thank you very much, and good luck.